Paul Seegert is with PCS Advisers, healthcare expert. He joins us now. Paul, what does it mean by a small possible risk?
Well, there's about 100 cases that have come up that they aren't saying are for certain a result of the vaccine, but these folks developed it shortly after getting the vaccine.
Okay, in 100 cases out of like literally tens of millions of doses.
That's right. I think they've administered, hundreds of millions of doses at this point.
But yeah, hundreds of millions. But then we also have the other risk that is out there, again, slight, a couple hundred cases out of hundreds of millions of doses of heart problems developing. Not from I don't know if that's from the J&J. I get confused. There's so many different types of vaccines. There's so many different potential side effects that have popped up from the various different vaccines. I don't know which one's which anymore. But doesn't all of this make the case for why any public official and really any commentator who goes around talking about how we need to force this on people is irresponsible?
I think each person needs to make their own assessment, certainly. Yeah. And it's a risk assessment at a personal level to say, okay, and I think most everyone already has, and the vast majority of people that want to get vaccinated are, and the remaining folks have made the assessment and said, hey, I'm a very low risk person, and so I am going to choose not to get vaccinated. Or they are, in my case, I'm not vaccinated. I have 5 kids. They're not vaccinated. I'm married. My wife's not vaccinated. But and the only reason for me to do it at this point would be virtue signaling, because the science says since we've all had COVID, we have immunity. And COVID went through our house, went through our office. Everybody got it. So that to me kind of I didn't have to make that risk assessment because I got the disease.
Right.
So many of us already have too, which we've talked about before, and I think that's a huge missing part of this conversation. But there's risk. If you we're at a point right now where the most recent report that came out, we had actually more people that died of an adverse reaction to the vaccine than died from COVID. And so if you go to VAERS, VAERS, the vaccine, where they report adverse events to vaccines, which is known to be underreported, oftentimes as low as 10% of the actual events. But if we just take that as real and accurate data, then about 1 in 55,000 people that get the vaccine have an adverse reaction that is serious enough that they die. Now, that's a very small chance of death, but it is a chance. And
right.
So if you can't, so you have to allow folks to make this decision, I think, independently on their own with the information that's out there.
That information that you just put out there about the VAERS database, the media is saying that people are taking those numbers out of context. How so?
Well, what we hear is that, hey, it may be coincidental that
right.
someone had the vaccine and then, within an hour died of a heart attack. And
right.
that could be true.
Right.
That could be true.
But the media wants to make that point clear now when they weren't making it clear early on when we were calling people who had been diagnosed with COVID and then died in a motorcycle wreck a COVID death.
Right. Yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that, and it's been known, to find out, okay, where can we get accurate information about a lot of this stuff? We kind of have to go pre-COVID because this has become so politically science-based.
Right, right.
But before COVID, there was pretty wide agreement on the fact that VAERS data was really conservative and was
right.
highly underreported.
Right.
And it was underreported as much as maybe only 10% of the events actually showed up on VAERS.
Right.
So that was something that we all had agreement on pre-COVID. So I kind of stick with that.
Right. So basically,
more than what VAERS is showing.
And based on what you were saying with the VAERS data, it could be as high as 10 and 55,000 people have died. But what they list is 1 in 55,000. And again, we don't know why they died. We just know that they died shortly after of X amount, whatever. And it could be coincidental or it could be a reaction from that.
That's right.
But to your point, This is exactly, and again, these numbers, when you have to look at it from a 30,000 foot view and say, all right, these numbers are very, very tiny. So there's risk in everything, right? If I want to get from this side of the street to that side of the street, there's a risk in crossing the street. I can reduce that risk by going to the crosswalk. And I can further reduce that risk by waiting for the green light, right? These are things that we can do to reduce the risk of dying from an awful virus. The vaccine is one of those things. There's still risk in crossing the street if I wait for the green light, because somebody could run the red light, right? There's still risk if I take the vaccine, but at the end of the day, it's probably the safest possible way to avoid or do what you want to do. You know what I mean? But at the same time, people have to be able to make that decision for themselves.
Yeah, I'm clear. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. My children have their vaccines. They go to school and all that kind of stuff. It's just I didn't look at this the same way.
Yeah.
There's not, and we had, and I didn't have to really go into deep analysis because we all got COVID. But the huge missing part of this, in my mind, is the fact that the CDC, we're highlighting some data, we're suppressing other data.
Right.
In the way that the media is operating around this whole topic. Why can't we talk about the fact that you get immunity from getting COVID?
Right.
It's a very simple, science-based fact, and it's a huge part of how you get to herd immunity. We could actually get to herd immunity without a vaccine. It would just mean more people have to get sick with the disease itself.
Right.
And I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm just saying let's be honest about it, because the numbers, according to the CDC's own data, likely 8 times more people have had the virus and recovered than even knew it and were diagnosed and officially counted. That puts us at herd immunity. That's why we see kind of fear-mongering around different variants, but we don't talk a lot about overwhelmed hospitals. We don't talk a lot about people dying right now because that just isn't really happening.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, Paul, I hate cutting you off. I got to run, but it's great talking to you again. Thank you for helping point out this important information. We appreciate you.